as I was saying, hello everybody and welcome. Welcome to today's talk with Si Hene, none other than Rita. And we're still trying to get it together. We have a few people in, we have 15 people in now. So we will wait for the rest of our friends to join us. And once everybody gets in here, we will start our
Yeah.
conversation. So we're just going to play us some videos that puts the whole conversation in perspective. And so let's enjoy these videos while we wait for our friends to join us.
So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending where you are. Thank you for joining us today as we are discussing the Royal Archives of Ghana and how we are preserving the majestical form. So today you have myself, Rita Mawuena Benissan, who is the founder and director of Si Hene. And then also you have
Achimota School. That's how we come in. And
yes.
we've been watching what Si Hene has been doing over the last couple of years and see how it's grown and what it's working on. And I think they are filling a very, very important space in preserving the value of what we have. I talk about how Si Hene and Achimota intersected.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing my own research on Nkrumah in Ghana, and I saw her post some videos, but those were very obscure videos, and I never really thought anybody would go out there to seek those kind of videos. And so I started following, and I saw the work that she does, and so that's how this conversation came together.
Yes. So I think we can do like a small introduction about each of our projects or each of what we do within our digital platforms. So as many of you guys know, Si Hene has been on Instagram and social media for over a year. So we're about to come into our second year in January of next year, which is very exciting. So we preserve the archives of the chieftaincy and the traditional culture of Ghana really looking to the photographic archives that are unseen or kind of lost just because they're not accessible in Ghana, but being able to actually share them to the world where people can actually see these images, see these videos. Because in a way, if we don't know our story, if we don't see our images of ourselves and our history, then how are we able to, acknowledge who we are and also acknowledge our history to the world? Yes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think for us as Achimota School as well, what we represent with the way we celebrate culture in the school and the importance of it. You know, the Founders Day celebration, for instance, which has been institutionalized for many years. When we see what Si Hene does, it ties into something that we believe should be preserved. And yeah, I mean, I believe the Majestic Form, which I think we'll get into very soon,
Mm-hmm.
we'll explore more on that topic.
Yes. So throughout the talk, we'll discuss various topics and questions. And through this, you'll be able to, within the comment section, or the chat section, you'll be able to also ask questions that we'll answer later on in the talk. But also, we want to be able to ask questions that you should also think about and see how does that connect to your own self, your own family, and also how you think about yourself as being Ghanaian, and how do you think about your royal archives or your royal preservation of your own self and your identity.
Yeah. The you talk about how you are as Ghanaians. It's interesting sometimes when you think about it that a lot of work is done by Ghanaians who are in the diaspora to preserve the cultural value. I mean, of course, there's work being done on that home, but I mean, if you look at most of the people in this community of people who have interest in this kind of conversation, a lot of us do the networking through different communities, and I think it's something that we need to figure out a way to bring it back into into Ghana as well and bring those organization skills. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, but anyway.
No, it's true. So the two main questions we're going to focus on is what is the Majestic Form? And then how do we as a country bring awareness to our history to the people, for the people and for our people? So not just the people in Ghana, but also abroad, even to the diasporans. So when you think about the Majestic Form, especially within the Chieftaincy, when I started Si Hene was my graduate research on the focus on the royal umbrellas. And as itself is a 9 feet umbrella or a 9 feet sculpture, which is a very majestic form. So how do we show the presence of being Ghanaian under that? And being able to identify that person who is royal under that umbrella, either if they're standing, they're sitting, they're dancing. So how does that presence affect their surroundings when they're next to a crowd of people, within maybe just their colleagues or even visitors who are coming to Ghana just to experience the ceremonies or just experience many of the events that have happened within our history. We also think about the kente cloth when we think about our aesthetic, what are we wearing, to really say this is our majestic form. Many aspects of our clothing, our dances, our communication is one of the most important of how we present ourselves as being Ghanaian. Our music, the beat of our instrumentals, the songs that we even listen to, or even that our parents or other generations have listened to, and how those are other storytellers of how we present our history. Because a lot of times, not everyone in other countries are going to present their history the same way that we do. So how do we really show our identity within many of the aspects many of the elements that we showcase within our dance, our music, our clothing, and then our objects as well, and even language.
And you talk about the music. It brings me to the video, the promo video that you did.
Yes.
And how evocative the punch of the music was. I think a lot of people weren't expecting to hear that.
Yes.
They probably thought they were gonna have something soft.
Oh, yes. I mean,
Yeah,
one thing for Si Hene that I really focus on, especially with a lot of the videos, many of the videos that I post, they usually don't have sound. And if they do have sound, it's usually just someone narrating what is happening. And usually the voices are not Ghanaian, they're usually
they're always
European
white.
born.
They're always
Yeah.
white. They're
Yes.
always white. Yeah,
So being able to actually, embody what is happening in the videos, I think is very important to even look at music, the type of
yeah,
instruments that we're using, because many of the drums that we're using within our ceremonies can be used to announce war, so it can be used to announce that a chief is coming, or the entourage of a chief is coming.
yeah.
So how do we use music and instrumentals in our lyrics or words to really say this is our story? This is what moments are happening, and how do we even continue that within modern day, within our own music that we listen to now? Because yes, we might not go back to traditional music, but you still find a lot of artists that are using these inspirations within their own beat making for modern music today.
And Nyumkro is so rich. You could tell by the way the lady sings from her soul. And
Yes.
all of them, well, Damisha, it's a Nyumkro group. They're a very good group. And there are other Nyumkro groups there as well that sing very well. And for me, I like to indulge that space occasionally. It's and I think it's part of that majestic form that we're talking about, because the Nyumkro has to go with the Kente, that the music, it's a whole performance.
Oh yes, definitely. The
You
communication of the hands, the communication
yes, yes, yes.
of the feet.
A couple of
Yes.
days ago, I was reading that. Well, yeah, a couple of days ago, I came across this information of how you place the hat on your head in the north.
Hmm.
Each direction means something.
Yes.
Yeah, and these were things that I didn't know before, and even the way that what Batakari said. Speaking of the north, you talk about the majestic form in the north as well. It's also very regal over there.
Yep.
Those guys have and I think over time, even if you look beyond northern Ghana and the Sahel, you see that there's a lot of because I think the two are together in a way, but they also feel separated because the focus is more on. The attention is in the south.
Yes, very true.
Yeah, but beyond the gold and the KTs, there are also the Batakaris. And,
Oh
and and if
yeah.
you think about it, the when the Southern Chiefs want to show up for something of significance, they show up in Batakari.
Yep. Yes.
Anytime a Parliament Chiefs is installed, wars, yeah, you see it.
No, no, it's definitely true. And I think, especially with archiving, when it comes to Ghana, we always mostly focus on the Ashanti region because many of the photographers were coming to the Ashanti region because of these ceremonies, because of these installments. But even if you think about, the term Si Hene, it means installment or to make someone a chief. But in the north, they said enskinment because they use the skin of an animal to install their chiefs. So I've been thinking about that. And I think that's really where we have to really focus on when we think about archiving. Where is this history coming from? Who are the storytellers and why or where are these documents, being photographed by and by who? Because a
Yeah.
lot of times then that's where the storyline of where are these photos, where are these videos? Because you find more videos, coming from the central region, coming from the Shanti region, because that's where many of these events were being recorded. But then the northern region, the Volta region, sometimes the eastern region kind of gets lost because not many people were coming or getting assigned to come and document these events.
All those things, so these are some of the challenges,
Yes.
and I think we have to make sure that we bridge it because there's still a confluence of the northern and the southern in general. I was telling my friend today that I've been to the Volta region before, but
Mm-hmm.
I always look at the culture there and I see how rich it is,
Yeah.
and even their own chieftaincy as well.
Oh yes.
Yeah, they have a uniqueness to it.
No, it's
just
very
as
true.
people in Togo and Benin.
Yep, it's very true.
That enclave has its own form itself. You know, they do the jumper under the kente.
Oh yes, and even if you think about it, even like through books, I mean, there's not many books that are written about the chieftaincy, and if they are, they're mostly articles. And I think like the two books that I know, they're from Ghanaian writers, and one of them is actually is called Chieftaincy in Ghana. It's actually focusing strictly on the chieftaincy in the Volta region. And I remember there was one writing that was talking about that during like the early 1800s, Germany was in the Volta region, very like colonialized our people there, and they actually got to the point where they didn't like that, the chiefs were called kings or other hierarchies statuses. So they actually told them that we're going to take your title away, so that the Germans will always be on top. And maybe that's a lot of times too where the history gets lost, because the people that are coming in to colonize our people, they're taking away their titles. So when you take away a person's titles, you're also taking away the history that's coming from that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's another reason why, there's not many photos of the chiefs in the Volta region as well.
So two things. Private collections, access to private collections, and then back to the Volta region again. There's this missing piece. I'll speak on it. I lost the thought, but I'll speak on it later on.
Yes. So I think when we think about private collections,
Private collections.
yeah, so even for Si Hene, many of the photos that we post are not actually located in Ghana. I would say like 95%. Majority of them are located at the British Museum, at the Fowler Museum at UCLA, at the Smithsonian, at the National African Art Museum. And it's sad because these are our photos, but we don't own them. But even within having them having a private collection, the way that they state the archives are usually not correct. They usually never have many of the individuals' names, their positions. So a lot of times when people say, oh, well, who's this chief? A lot of times the information is not there. Or even how some of the chief's photos are presented too are not always correct too, because sometimes they might flip an image. Just the way that we wear our kente is always on a particular side of our body. But easily with a photograph, you can easily flip something. So once you flip an image, now you're creating a new story saying, okay, this is the way that they wore kente. But then that's not always true. And I think too, I feel that a lot of private collections need to really start working with a lot of the countries that they're taking these photographs from, because then we can be our own storytellers. Because if the storytellers are from the Western eye and a Western perspective, they're not going to always be correct. And then also, we think about how many, African countries like Nigeria, Benin, Ivory Coast, Senegal, that are asking for the artifacts back. And one thing that I always thought about, like, okay, so what happens if Ghana did the same thing?
If we did it, well, Ghana.
If Ghana did the same thing, like ask for our artifacts back. But one thing about that I would love to do, but one thing I always think about, do we have spaces that we can actually store these objects and keep them, be able to preserve them for a long time?
People have private art collections in Ghana.
Yes.
I mean,
but make it to the public eye. So are we able to do our museum?
We're not there yet. We're not there. And I think, and sometimes you think about that, then you might want to just leave it where it is for now.
Yeah.
Till you're able to preserve it, because preservation is also very important.
Oh yes. Yes.
Preservation of it, you bring it out there and you have to make sure that it's well preserved. But I mean, it's just like our money. We put our money in the banks over there anyway.
No, that's very true, and that's very true.
If we're gonna keep our art over there, then I think we're still on the same path. But no, what I was gonna say before was Volta region. Volta region was the German occupation of Volta region, and for whatever it's worth, I think that is why the civil service and the cultural, a lot of the early history of how the country Ghana itself was built.
Mm-hmm.
The Germans trained them. There was a lot of German technical training.
Yes.
And so a lot of them came into the civil service to help build the early Nkrumah government and stuff like that. And I think also the soul of the country is there. You know, the
Yeah,
musical
no,
soul,
definitely.
the bobo music. You know, you think about
Yes.
Rita and what they. He's also another, and you start to think about examples of people who preserve this majestic form. You look at
Mhm.
Benissan was
Yes.
one of those guys who was able to preserve that majestic look.
No, it's true. It's very true.
I think his pictures that I've seen over the well, as long as I've researched into that period, he always had a flair with how he presented himself, and then and so you bring it back to Achimota School and our Founders Day. That is
Yes.
part of the teaching that they give leading up to that day for the people that perform, because everybody gets a chance to perform. I mean, during my time, people wanted to perform and they weren't given a chance because they wanted the best dancers, the best, different things that put together the best drummers. And I think that is something that we need to start looking at in different pockets of our entire,
So
community.
I think you should explain to them what is Founders Day. Because for
Oh,
someone like who didn't grow up in Ghana, Founders Day is not something that is known. So you should explain that too.
okay. So, Achimota School has a Founders Day celebration that we do every first week of March every year,
Okay.
and it celebrates the founders of the school, Gudgesberg, Fraser, and Agri. And there's a weekend celebration, and we have alumni from all over the world come. This is just like a little festival that we do every year, just to check in to see that the situation is still together.
Yeah.
But it's also a celebration in the school itself, and part of it is a cultural display for the fathers is there on the Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Guests that have been at this there goes from Prempeh II to Asantene Prempeh II to Queen Elizabeth to presidents and diplomats and some of the biggest people. And it's a performance.
Yes.
That's the idea behind it, and that's where if you read the caption that was used for the initial introduction of this conversation, it says performance art.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because in a way, if you think about our culture, everything that we do is a performance art. It all springs back to the arts in
Yes, yes,
different
yes.
ways, even if it's visually, performing, installation wise, is all part of an art form.
And it takes a certain flair. I mean, it goes back. So bringing everything, tying it back to the flair. It takes a
Yes,
certain flair to be able to put that majestic form out there and let it look the way it's supposed to look.
no, that's very true. That's very
It
true.
doesn't just happen.
Oh yeah. And I think we can go from there to talk about how, within a school system, Achimota School, from my experience, been seeing from what I'm seeing on Instagram, and many of my family members, graduated from Achimota School. Shout out to the Benissan family. But we can also talk about how many of our school systems don't actually teach our kids about the heritage within their curriculum. But the Achimota School really makes sure to focus an aspect of their curriculum or their syllabus to making sure that the children or the students are learning how to dance, within performances of Founders Day or Heritage Day, and also just making sure that that's a part of their school system. And when they graduate, their history, their heritage will always, be left within them. So we should also, I think, talk about how maybe within the school system, like why does Achimota really focuses on that?
Why does she want to focus on culture? Yes, because it's who we are. It's the value of
Hello.
the yeah, man. We focus on the
So I
culture.
think I think, or mine frozen.
You good?
Okay, okay. I think we are good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. But yes, I think
Why we take the culture of the country very seriously, and the culture of
yes,
the country in the school.
yes,
Oh, I'll tell you why. It's the foundation of it. You know, I mean, for me, I look at Achimota as an institution that can be placed next to. It's right there in the history of Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
You can put it next to Kente. You can put it next to. That's how I look at it.
Yes.
So I can see other people who are from there also have that same view. And the stories are there, the history is there to
Mm-hmm.
back it as it weaves into our national history.
Yeah.
And I think with that foresight, you know, you have the 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 school body. You know, you have the school body see that value. I mean, you look at even the founding of it itself. Guggisberg's book on it. You know, they sat down and they thought about the importance of culture. Guggisberg was talking about why the blacks needed to stop looking like trying to do white things and be more black.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that is the soul of the Ashimoto that we have experienced. And but I think other people there as well who have experienced it can tell the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, and I think we're going to do it. I mean, I think for me, the 100th anniversary coming up, Founders Day, is something that's very close to my heart. I'm looking forward to it because I think
Yes.
it would be a great opportunity for us to showcase a collection of this culture over the last 100 years.
Okay. So
Yeah,
thinking about within the last 100 years and thinking about, I would say like your national identity.
yes,
Um, so when we think about even the connection to the chieftaincy or even the connection to your school lineage, you know, if you graduated from a school, you will always forever be known for that school. So let's think about that in that connection of how it goes to the chieftaincy and how many of our family lineages have the connection to a chieftaincy lineage or installment or a stool name. A lot of times we might not know that, because even for myself, on my mom's side, my grandfather was a traditional chief in the Volta region, but also within our family lineage, we have a connection to Ajesu in the Ashanti region. Even though we're not fully know the history of where that connection leads to or where it started, at least it's something that opens the door to, you know, for me, especially with Si Hene, to be able to actually know more and actually see where is that connection within the Volta region and, you know, the Ashanti region within my family. And so it kind of thinks about how within many of the photos that I post, people say like, oh, you post my grandfather, but they never seen that photo. So how, in a way, through generations do we think about how, our own lineage and how we qualify our own national identity? Just because a lot of times we might not know truly where our grandfather was, his position, but at least we know, okay, yes, I have royalty in my family, but we don't really know the story behind it. Or even within your own town that you live in, you might be able to say, okay, I know I have a chief that lives in my town, but there's not much information about him or that stool that is named. So we also had to think about how do we bring that awareness or bring that information to the people or even to our family.
well, I mean, I think the people. Well, some of the things that we can do is think events like Akwesidai. Akwesidai is every 6 weeks. You can,
Mm-hmm.
if we are really serious about doing something to preserve it, we need to make sure that every 6 weeks we get in. I mean, Adai is coming next week.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you know, so these are things that I think on a very practical and top of mind effort to keep it going. We need to get involved on that level.
But I think too another problem could be is a lot of times we have all these festivals, but we never know where these festivals are happening. A lot of times, even on the internet, you can say, oh, "Okay, well, I know in the Eastern region this is happening, or I know in the Central region this is happening," but there's not a concrete timeline that says this is a schedule of all this is happening, or what time is going to start, or what city is going to be.
You
So I
share,
do have to
I
think
do
about
share it
that too.
sometimes. I mean, I seek it, so I do share it sometime when I come across it on my own. And again, the communities we need to build together. You know,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, because this is a very niche community. Look at the audience. I don't think there's going to be a conversation that thousands of people are going to listen to. You know, but
But we could get there.
no, it's not about getting there. It's about how. small a niche of a community this is, and how we have to protect some of that as well, the privacy of it.
I mean,
And
I mean, we can protect the privacy of it, but I also think it's important for the public to know, even if, at least if even if it's in our own country. So, for example, even if it's a short commercial that just says, "Okay, this is happening," so at least it is known. Because even if you think about within maybe the early like the early '90s, I was looking at the public archive building archives that they have, and they literally had this huge, like 3 or 4 books of just newspapers, and you can see the importance of them showcasing all these festivals when they're happening, the recap of what happened during this festival, even if it's the chief opening the school and this many other chiefs, um, donated to that fund for that school, or even endorsements from many of our companies like Guinness, who came and endorsed these festivals. But now it's just a big silence. And I think that's really the main problem when we think about like the misconceptions of our traditional culture and our chieftaincy,
I
because
was
it's
about to
that
say, yes.
the information is there, but it's just like, how do we get this information to the people? The photos are there, but how do we get the photos to our people? Because they're not located in Ghana. And if they are, how do we even bring the importance? And I think it's just that even though, yes, we had to start small, but we also had to think bigger about, okay, if we all look at our family photos, or even think about the importance of keeping our family photos alive, because a lot of times, even if you have like a small tear, or you see a photo, decaying, they're like, okay, this photo is not worth it's not have no valuable anymore because it's tearing apart. But that one photo could just mean so much to your family and within your lineage, your installment. Because a lot of times too, it's just that many of the photos that we have, like you see some similarities within the family photos that you have in your house. I mean, it might be something that's just hanging on the wall. It might be something that your grandparents or your great grandparents had told you about, but at a certain point of your age, you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to take much value into this photo. But now, especially the use of Instagram, people are thinking about, okay, how do we actually preserve, a physical photo that's not can be digital? Because now with digital, with Google Drives, Flickr, Instagram, these are all sources that people can continue to hold these images for long periods of time. And then, the physical photos, even if they are fading or whatever, at least the digital photo is still alive.
Absolutely right. And the need for physical preservation is something that I see has also been on your mind, as it's
Oh,
been on
yes.
mine. Going back to early in the conversation on why, whether we need to bring the art back to Ghana as part of the national identity.
Yeah,
Also think about, can we maintain it? And
that's
that's a
true.
part of the challenge itself there. But as we go along, I think before we open it up to friends to have their questions, I see some hands up already. Um, I think it's important for us to also see where we can do this work. You know, you take funerals for instance. Funerals are the number one display of our cultural presence in the country.
Hmm.
Any other celebration. And that is a way, I mean, I think there should be a documentary on funerals and how people, over a year or something like that, or over years, because we celebrate a lot of culture. I mean, you don't see them wearing the bazooka, you don't see them wearing clothes. The seriousness of the black cloth.
Yes. But I
Yeah,
think too that also comes into what is open for the public eye, and then what is open for privacy. Because a lot of times, even with funerals, they're not open for the public eye. And even if it's a funeral of a chief, it's just the people within the town that is coming together to celebrate and then acknowledge that person.
but what I'm talking more about the display Because I mean, that's only they're not gonna find the culture at school. You know, we invest a lot of money in funerals, and I think that is one of the places where we should capture it. The
Oh yeah,
beauty of
that's
the
that's what we talk about. But what is for the public eye, and then what is for privacy, though?
mm,
Yes,
um,
yes.
but
So,
anyway,
and I think too is that, more people, I feel like now with the use of, simply your phones, and your phones are being able to take high definition images and high definition videos. Now people are, being able to capture these moments. I remember like a few years ago when Tumblr was such a big platform. So I felt like, if people don't know what Tumblr is, it's an older version of what Pinterest is, where you're just posting a lot of these photos that can be your inspirations, posting these photos that just you can be your blog, but it's just something that people can read, look at, and then reshare, just like our Twitter, our Instagrams. And I remember, living in the United States, with my perspective of Ghana, I was also seeing it from my family's perspective, but what people my age were posting on Tumblr when they went back home, because then you actually get to see them opening up about, okay, I went to my my grandfather's funeral, and these are, my experience. And so from there, I'm able to collect, okay, some similarities of what Ghana was to them, and then kind of being able to create my own perspective too. But then when you actually get to actually go to Ghana and actually experience this event, a lot of times, even the ceremonies, you might not even be invited to. So how do you actually experience that in a way that it will make sense to you, but maybe at a distance? And that's where we kind of had to think about, okay, what is for the public eye, and then what is also for the privacy? Because even the way that even at ceremonies, the way that the display, the body is also important. Because I remember my mom she was telling me about my grandfather's funeral, where, he was actually, I think she told me that, yes, it was a dead body, but he was seated as he was alive. So in a way, people were acknowledging him within the decayness that he had, but still being able to embody the legacy and the life that he showed within the years that he was alive. So kind of thinking about that too.
so let me ask you this very I think key question. What made you do Si Hene?
Oh yeah, so well,
Why Si Hene? Because you live in America, you have no business doing Si Hene. In the
oh yeah. I mean, I feel like, growing up in the United States, like you're always know within your identity of being Ghanaian, even if it's the food that you eat, the clothes that you wear, the music that you listen to, even just the stories that your parents tell you, or the families that or the family history that your family tells you as well through Skype, when Skype was a thing. But one thing that helped me was that, like, during grad school, I was working on a project called the Black Aesthetic, and where I was like photographing different individuals who were African and African American, and how they actually showcases their identity or their blackness, just because the schools that I went to were predominantly white. So if you know, well, I went to University of Michigan, Michigan State University for my undergrad, and University of Wisconsin-Madison. And if you ever heard of Wisconsin-Madison, it's very, very white. There's only like 2% of Black students on campus. So kind of seeing how does your identity kind of showcase within your presence on that campus. And so photographing these different individuals, students, professors, and kind of hearing their stories, how do I even showcase my own identity of being Ghanaian, but also just living the majority of my life in America? And so thinking about really, the kente that I wear, the kente that history that I read within books, and then also just the information that wasn't there, but the information that I knew about. And so that's where the royal umbrella came through, because, it's a form that when I first came to Ghana, since I was a baby, was a couple of years ago. And when I literally arrived, I just saw lots of market umbrellas, on the roadside of Ghana. And it was just very interesting because, as we know, like, Ghana is very crowded, but those umbrellas just stand out so much because you have like the MTN or Vodafone umbrella, which is red and yellow. And then you might have other regular umbrellas that are other colors. But within the crowdiness of the of the market, the crowdiness of the streets of Ghana or the streets of Accra, those umbrellas stood out, and the people that was selling under the umbrella stood out themselves. And so then it got me really thinking about, okay, this is such a big form. And then thinking about, okay, how does this also, relate to the royal umbrellas? Because just like the chief's umbrellas that, identify who they are, identify what region that they're from, and identify what animal that, embodies their presence as well. How does these market umbrellas do the same thing for the everyday Ghanaian? Just because even though we might not have all royal blood or royal lineage, we still make our own presence within our everyday life. And so thinking about that, I was like, okay, researching about, the history of Ghana and United States, you'll get like half true stories and half false stories. Just because with connections to universities, you can have a limited, databases that you can access, right? Within JSTAR, which I get a lot of the photos from because
the Cambridge University library has a lot of stuff as well.
Yes. So within that, I was reading about these umbrellas, but something was just off because they weren't showing images of like the early umbrellas that was maybe done in the early 1800s or the early 1900s. So they only show like the umbrellas that were presented in like the early 2000s and what you'll see within festivals, And so thinking about that, it made me, go back to Ghana, really see, what my identity as being Ghanaian is, but then also really just research about the umbrellas. So I was able to go to the Benissan Palace and talk with Professor Asafo Kantaka, and literally they spent hours with me just explaining the importance, the symbolisms, the type of fabrics. And at first I was like, you know what, I feel like the umbrellas are still a very colonial object because it actually wasn't an umbrella that was actually made in Ghana. It was a gift from a Dutch governor in 1701. So think about 1701, where we would not hear anything about Ghana in 1701 because there's not much history written back from that period. It's like, okay, so from 1701 to 2020 is when I really started the project. It's like, okay, there's a big, huge gap between these very early generations of umbrellas to what we see nowadays. And so that really made me think about, okay, so if I can't really find many of these historical images, I know anyone else can't either. And so I just started collecting, reading, collecting. And it's like you spend hours and hours on Google using different keywords or trying to find the identities or the national identities of these chiefs as well. And then trying to find the lineage, because a lot of times you can use keywords saying, if you look up Ashanti chiefs, the only person that they're going to give you is just, Prempeh, Osututu II. And so that's going to be the main views, and that's it. Or if you put, but like it's actually very funny because if you look up other countries like in Nigeria or in Benin, they'll have like the Dahomey king, and so they have many images of that. Just because for that time period, when he was installed in Benin, they documented him in every aspect of his life. But in Ghana, it's very weird because they're documenting it, but then they're not, using keywords to say, okay, this is who this person is. And I think keywords and hashtags or like metadata, those are also important because then when people are looking up this information, it's easy access. But when the information or that metadata is not there, the information is literally just blank. And so I think that's really why I really wanted to started Si Hene, just because I was just like, it was very hard for me to start this research because literally the information wasn't there. But it's also thinking about, people in Ghana, how are they actually researching this history themselves? And what information are they using? And what perspective are they using? And I think at a certain point, it got weird because I was like, okay, these are not just regular everyday people. These are also people's family members. So how do you preserve these legacies and uphold the type of person that they were? So it's not that, okay, like, yes, we're honoring this person, but you're also honoring someone's grandfather or someone's dad or someone's uncle or even someone's mother. And thinking about like their hierarchy too. And I think that's also just kind of brings into what is that national identity. Just because even if you live in the United States, we have to think about like the year of return and beyond the return, where a lot of the diasporans and all the African Americans are coming back home. But it's just like, okay, what is this home that they're coming to? What are the traditions that we're teaching them? Because at a certain point, I think about, okay, what is going to be Ghana's national identity in 5 years with, these initiatives of beyond the return, if we're just, focusing on the forts, the slavery forts. Because yes, that was part of history, but we're only showing one side of that history, but not the rest. And I think that's also, it's good that they're, bringing that history up and wanting to have people to connect with the ancestors. But it's also that missing part where now our heritage, our tradition are also getting lost because we're only focusing on one thing. Because when people first thought of Ghana, it's just thought about kente cloth, they thought about the music, they thought about, especially in America, waist beads was a very prominent thing. Braids, language, especially too. But now it's just like in 5 years or 10 years time, our national identity is going to go lost because the value of what our traditions are not really being, acknowledged anymore. Because even with these ceremonies, the chiefs can come for these ancestral rites, but when people are going through this passage of their time, they're not actually understanding, okay, why is this chief actually here? What is the importance of his legacy that he hold within the past generations? So that's really why we really got to think about what is our national identity. And I think within the questions and answers,
I'll tell you this as part of what I know as part of this national identity, because it's also something that I think about. What will the national identity look like in 5 years? What would it look like in 10 years? You look at the youth in Africa and how big it is. What would a Ghanaian look like in 20 years?
Yeah.
When you describe a Ghanaian, what we know them by? I think we're going to know them by KT, or we're going to know something completely different. And I think we have an opportunity to shape that.
Yes.
If we preserve it. Because they've already taken the resources. It took all the gold. Everything is gone. The only thing that's not gone is the culture, because you can't neuter the culture.
No, that's very true.
It's within the people, and that's why I say we need to go back to simple things like Pussy Diets, and those are constant reminders to let us know that if we give this up, we're done.
That's true. That's very true.
The oil is gone, the gold is gone, but the culture is still there.
No, that's very true. That's very true.
I think there's no other way, the softest way to present Africa in the global space with what the interest that we all have is always good when it's very palatable for the people who are consuming it as well. Because you need both forces to interact to make it what it's supposed to be. And what would a Ghanaian look like? What would a Ghanaian look like at the time?
It's true, because even if you think about books, there's not many books that are written by our people, and if they are, they're not being published into like the hierarchy of what the top 100 books of the year to read, or even the movies. We don't have. I don't think we might only have maybe 1 or 2 historical movies that people can say, oh yes, this is about our history, this is about our people. Because even though living in the United States, growing up, museums, institutions, we were forced to go on field trips to literally go through what our history of America was. And then even though that was like a yearly thing, like twice a year you'll go on a field trip, but that's something that's actually studied in Ghana. Where are these students going on? What trips are they going to actually learn about who they come from? And also, how do we even tell the story?
You tell the story. That's the important part of it. It's something that again, education and how it's presented and the shaping of the mind.
Yeah.
Because I think the generation before that, we look at a lot of the stuff that we look at are from the 70s, the 60s and 70s. There's not so much in the late 70s to the 80s that it comes back up again, so
yes,
it means that during that break there was something there.
Yep.
Yeah, because this is a conversation we had where you talk about we present the story of the slavery and the forts and castles, but beyond forts and castles, you also have a period in which we lived as Ghanaians, as a young country,
Yeah,
growing
that's very true.
dreams and ambition and trying to do something. And you look at the content that's captured during that period, you feel that energy in it.
No, that's very
Yeah,
true.
those Nkrumah videos that come out and like the independent stuff. I mean, I heard a lot of it was destroyed, but anyway, that's a whole different conversation.
But yeah, but the thing is also when you think about, okay, yes, they're destroyed, but a lot of times many of these stories are also just in our families' homes.
Mhm.
But we also need to think about, how do we even have that conversations with our parents, our grandparents, and even recording. So like the oral storytelling was the most important way for Ghanaians or just Africans in general to be able to continue to tell their history. Even with Kente cloth, the golden stool, there might not be videos of this happening or documentations of this happening, but you know about the story because someone told you about the story. There wasn't anything written like, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened. No, it's because, okay, I went to this historian or my grandparents or my mom or my dad told me this. So you're hearing this. So in a way, are we keeping these recordings? If they are, where is this recordings being told? Is it on podcasts? Are they on people's YouTube channels? Do we just, even with our like Ministry of Informations, do we have, a database that has all these oral storytellings that we can say, okay, this is what happened, bam. Because then from there, you're able to also create visuals, so that we can actually have physical, even if it's, real people playing out these characters. Because I remember even there was, in the UK, they have like, I think it's called Drunken History. And then they did a drunken history about Ya Santewa. But why did it take Europe to actually acknowledge this history instead of us doing our own recap of it or remake of it?
The Yasantua picture, the picture that we know of Yasantua with the wife
Oh
and
yeah, it's not even real.
and
So
all
people,
these years,
yeah, so people think that, oh, this
people
is
are
the
thinking
real
that it
image of
was.
her, was actually someone that was just dressed up as her.
At Howard University here in DC.
Yes.
You know,
But that also makes you think about, okay, what part of our history from the photos are actually like real photos, and then which ones are not, you know? And so that's why I feel like, especially as a country and as our people, we really need to focus on how do we continue our stories? How do we continue to tell who we are? And not wait until a European or American country, American state, European country, American state, actually says, okay, now we're going to acknowledge Ghana. And then Ghana says, okay, now we're going to acknowledge our own history. But why can't we do it first? Because once we do it first, then everyone else will follow.
and I think that's the job of the diaspora. That's where they come in because it's always going to happen that way. The appreciation is not always going. It's not always directly with the people who have it. So if there's an interest there, that connection should be made and build that bridge.
But I think too is that
in our appreciation of it, we know that there are people who are also watching it who are intrigued by it.
I mean, that's true. But I think too, it's like, why do we always have to wait for another person?
Again, please.
Why do we always have to wait for another person in a different place to value it?
So I'll say this: we are lucky we have a question. So let me ask.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of questions.
Yeah, we have some questions. That, I was waiting to see if I was reading to see if hopefully we get some questions. But yeah, there we go. So let me. You see it, right?
Yeah, I see it.
All right, you go ahead and read it, the last one.
Okay, so we'll do Eugene. So about national identity, can ethnic groups identify and share space with national identity since Ghana is a multi-ethnic society? I think it can, but I think one problem that we do have is the rivalries of ethnic groups, thinking that one ethnic group is better than another. And I think once we kind of balance that out with not having so much of a rivalry, we can just all appreciate, the different cultures that we have within our, each of our groups. Because even if we think about kente cloth, we always focus on the Ashanti kente cloth, but we don't really focus on the, the beauty of, Ewe kente cloth. Because even if you look at the designs of Ewe kente cloth, they have, instead of using words or symbols, they're using stencils. Yeah, and the stencils of, animals, the stencil of everyday objects that they use within their own household, and even the colors. Ashanti Kente cloth is more stand out contrast colors, as every Kente cloth is more cool, neutral tones. And I think we also need to focus on.
I've never paid attention to that.
Yeah,
Now that you say that, I'm gonna
yeah,
look
it's very
into it.
neutral colors, very very neutral colors. And I think, but for us to be able to have a very multi ethnic society, we need to be able to show all parts, and even language. I think language is a big thing, because people. I think there's this guy on YouTube that said, "Oh, you're not Ghanaian because you can't speak Twi." But Twi is not actually our primary languages, because we have we have so many different languages throughout the country. So we don't really like, yes, maybe English might be a secondary primary language, as a lot of people do know. But within our own native languages, we have so much that we can't just say this what makes you Ghanaian because you can speak Twi. Okay, so if you can't, then what happens to that identity of yourself?
Because the Ghanaians who live in Ghana don't speak Twi, but speak other languages.
Yes.
And so the fact that you now can't speak Twi doesn't mean that. Yeah, I mean, again, what is the national identity going to look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? Because I mean, this is going to be within our lifetime.
Yes.
It's would be.
So I think the second part of his question was, can the ethnic identity be merged with the national identity? I think it can, just because once you know more about, the ethnic that you came from, then you will have a different, you'll have a deeper appreciation about, what do they wear in that type of region, what language they speak, what type of music. So then that merges into your national identity, because then you're able to, even like the foods that you eat. My favorite food is banku and okra stew, which is a very Bulgarian thing. So thinking about these items that are going within your family, these items that you're wearing, and that you're gonna later on within your own family are going to share with your kids, your grandkids. And so that's really how that identity is going to merge and be embodied through different generations. But I think before we really even think about the national identity, we also need to focus on the problems that we have within our own, ethnic identity too. Because once we're able to show and actually have appreciation for many of our ethnic groups within the country, then we're able to actually merge into the national identity to say, okay, this is who we are as Ghanaians, not just one specific group.
The national identity and what you just spoke on about the conflict within the ethnic groups itself. I came across an effort to build a museum in the north,
Mm-hmm.
preserve remnants of the period that we experienced there with the slave trade business and all this stuff. And a lot of families have these artifacts and collections, but they don't share it because
Yeah.
they know that if they do share it, it's going to create needless conflicts within the societies. And I think we need to figure out ways to fix those internal conflicts. Once we're able to fix them, we're able to
Yeah.
present more united fronts and we can demand for more of what we are.
Oh yes,
And it will
definitely.
help because if we're able to fix most of the conflicts, we can fix all the conflicts. But if you're able to fix most of the conflicts within internally, it's easy to take that security to join other groups.
No, it's very true.
Up very well, and then
Oh, yeah.
now you create that identity, that national identity. And I think it has to be something that we work on, and again, locally.
Yeah, that's very true. Because even thinking about like the Olympics, I remember when I posted a picture of the Olympics where everyone was dressed in kente cloth. But even though, yes, each year we always have a kente cloth design within each of our design, but it's only focusing on one ethnic group in one region,
More questions. That's a good sign. I'm
Yes.
really enjoying it.
Okay, so let's do Simon. Simon said, I love the idea of creating a calendar for the cultural festivals among tribes in Ghana. Yes, I mean, that I think that's one of the main things. Because, too, even when we think about people coming to Ghana, or even people already in the country, Like we all know that these things are important, and we all know these things happen. But it's just like we don't have a concise calendar. We don't have a concise website to look. And I think too is just, and it's not just the job of one person, because the chiefs within that region and the council within that region, they do it for their people, but it's just nothing that's for the whole entire country. So if there's a way where we can actually have a concise and actually accurate calendar, and even just accurate phone numbers, emails that people can actually get this information from. But even if you think about it, there's even some chieftaincy councils that actually have their own like websites that actually shows you about who's their chief, who's their linguistic, their queen mother. But not all chieftaincy councils have this. They might even have it on Facebook, but they don't actually have it that's accessible to everyone. So even the thing about how do even the Ministry of Chieftaincy, enforce this, that we can actually, like, each council has to have a website. Because yes, not everyone might not have social media and are able to actually see this, but even if it's a website that is updated, this can actually show us a list of what these events are happening. And even if there's things that might be private, they don't have to actually show that, but at least something that's public,
And again, the national identity question, it keeps ringing in my mind, because it's something that I've thought about occasionally, but I'm glad somebody else out there is also thinking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Something that.
So we're going to go to Elijah's question. So Elijah was actually our co-director of Si Hene. Shout out to Elijah. So Elijah says, I would like to know how the government of Ghana, the creative art industry, and the Ministry of Tourism can do to improve upon our archive system and safeguard our history. I mean, I think for the Ministry of Tourism, they just really need to acknowledge it. And I think the creative art industry too, they just need to acknowledge it. I think they want to acknowledge it within like social media presence, but I think within the Ministry of Tourism, it's mostly they're focusing on how do we bring, how do we make Ghana look presentable to the eye of the Western world, instead of making making it like beautiful or present to the people in Ghana. And I think this year they've been doing like domestic traveling, but even if you look at the photos, it's really mostly about different, national attractions, but still the slavery forts. And
the heritage tourism situation is something that we have to be careful about.
Yeah,
because after a while, they get tired of looking at the forts and castles.
But I think, is they might say you might say they will get tired of it, but it's also that's what's bringing them money.
It's not sustainable money.
But it's not. It might not be sustainable, but that is what's bringing the money. That's what is bringing more people to the country and moving and investing. Because they say, oh, invest into the country, but not the people. Because even if you invest into the country, that's not going to do anything when it comes to investing into the people, because some of the people can't even appreciate or can't even afford many of the things that the people are investing in. And if they're not investing into the heritage, the archives, and the museums, then these are not important to people. Because the thing is, why do Ghanaians have to go outside of the country to actually go to an institution, a museum institution, to learn about Ghanaian history? But then we don't have anything in our own country to say, we appreciate our culture, we appreciate our heritage. Because once we start our story in Ghana, then people don't have to leave Ghana to go out of the country to actually appreciate who they are. Yes.
We have another question in there. Let me get it up for us. And we are almost close to the hour mark, so.
Okay. So let's ask more questions. Yes. So within talking with like the National House of Chiefs and others institutions, so Si Hene has definitely been able to reach out to different National House of Chiefs and different ministries and really have that conversation, even talk with different chiefs. And I think a lot of times the chiefs actually do want to be engaged in this conversation, but it's just that who are the messengers? Who, like, how do they relate it? Because a lot of times the chiefs are maybe 80, 60 years old, so they're not on Instagram. You know, there might be some chiefs that are on Instagram, but a lot of them are not. So they're not really thinking about, okay, what is the best way to engage with a generation that is so internet and social media based? And so hopefully, you know, we're working as like Si Hene can be the messengers for the chiefs. So all the information, the data, the archives that they do have, Si Hene will be able to actually be the storytellers. I mean, it's going to take a while because they're within the 16 regions and the many chieftaincy within each of the 16 regions and the councils. But that's definitely something that we're working towards, especially that is regional based for specifically for that region, because those are the most important. Because a lot of times, even if you think about events, all the events usually happen in Accra. But then people from the northern region, people from the central region are not going to drive all the way to Accra to, you know, partake in these events. Or even like they had like the Pan Africa event that was happening in central region. But not everyone's going to travel all the way to the central region to know about this, you know, this event. So being able to actually have events that are specifically to that region, so that the people within that city or that town can actually experience it within their own selves. So that's definitely that's what we've been working on. And so hopefully, cross my fingers, 2022, that's when many of these events will come together, especially since I really want to establish Si Hene in Ghana, just so that can take one step as we're preserving the history to the people.
That's something that I believe I think we should have spoken about as well, because you know there's a need for us to be in having local presence there, you know, so let's be away and like the Met Museum and the but it's an entity that is also embedded locally.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing too, we have museums, but many of the museums are not.
Hene as his own entity.
Oh yeah, we're definitely working on that. Yes, we're definitely working on that.
So I think do we have see if we have any more questions, and we can just.
So someone says, are you ready to work with any traditional institution that's ready to well document this history? Oh yes, I'm definitely ready for to work with a lot of the traditional institutions. But I think too is just the support and making sure that it goes well. Because a lot of times I feel like in Ghana, you can start a lot of these projects, you can start a lot of these buildings, but a lot of times the end result is never finished, you know? Or we start these projects and then you're asking, okay, what is next? So in a way, we also had to think about longevity, about, okay, what happens when you do start this project? What's the next thing? And so I think that's what's important for Si Hene as I'm working on it, as that we think about, okay, so we have our Instagram, we have our social media presence, but what is next? Because not everyone has Instagram, not everyone has social media or have access to it. So how do we connect to different generations? You know, how do we have our grandparents also take value and, you know, take importance about, okay, you know, I want to show my grandkids this exhibition, or I want to show my grandkids this place. And even if it's showing old palaces and palaces that are not being used anymore, because at the end of the day, in a few years, they're going to be demolished, you know? And so thinking about, okay, how do we continue to keep these spaces open and these institutions open, even if they're old, but like, how do we preserve buildings? Because if they're able to preserve the ports, we should also be able to preserve the palaces too, because that's where the history is actually is. That's where the events, the meetings, you know? Yes.
Yeah, because and you think of places where we could preserve these collections. Those are places that we can refurbish and preserve them there.
It's very true. It's very, very true. Yes.
Anyway, so as we come to a close.
Yes. So do we have any more? I think maybe we can have them.
It's been a good hour, and thank you all for coming and hanging in there with us.
Yes. So if we have any more, if anyone has any questions, I think we can actually have them like raise their hand, and then they can ask their questions too if they want.
Great that you want to collaborate. Let's connect. There's a team in Gilmore working on extensively and championed by the paramount Queen Mother. Okay. Thank you for the great show. Would also love to collaborate, especially through architecture. Yeah. Architecture is a big part of it. I love that local architecture. Man, whoever said that architecture, yes, the form in architecture is just beautiful.
Oh, yes.
If you look at how many influences we can use drawing from that chieftaincy pedigree and how they preserve their architecture. Like you look at some of the houses. I was looking at Atakwame recently. I was just doing stuff, and okay. And not just him, but there's just a whole range of architects. I mean, again, I keep talking about this. There are dancing people in their can. There are dancing people of their cans.
Yes.
Casey, architects. The name itself, so it's been with us. The Sikrai symbol, the Sikrai design, where they have the black base with the white tops, and they were building like that. I mean, I was listening to a talk by I think Nana Project or one of the people in this space, and
Yes.
they were talking about the North and how it was the architects used to build over there. There was a lady on the call who was talking about giving a lot of history on how they would build in such a way that they would have pools on top. They started doing the 2-3 stories way before the Europeans can copy it.
Yeah.
And it's not the uniqueness of it, because sometimes you look at how even the architecture is developing in Ghana, and we have structures. It's just structures. It's just big.
Oh, yes. And even like the Adinkra symbols that are also implanted into the walls itself too. Yeah.
So the architecture and I think the architecture will also play a part. The culture, the architecture, because the architecture will give us that identity that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's very true.
Architecture will. I mean, you look at some of these Chinese. I don't want to use China. You look at some of these cultural, like you think of like Mecca and the divinity that comes with some of these places.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We're talking divine places like that.
Yeah, I think too. Just even the architecture, the design, the placement of the shape is very important, because everything that we do has a symbol or symbolizes something. It's not just like, oh, we're just going to put a house here. The layout of the land is very important, because maybe be sacred to what their ceremonies are for, or how do they interact with the connection to the ancestors too. So everything we do within the materials that we're using, the amount of houses that can be on the land, even what these houses are used for.
I see. So the second year student who visited Ghana in 2019. One of our students made a project based on the umbrella. The last project was by Jemima Arts and Shanks. We are currently showing these projects in Venice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'll
be interesting to see.
Yeah, because even if you think, even the National Cathedral, it literally embodies the chieftaincy structure from the stool to the umbrella. So it's just that I feel like we really need to really think about why we build the buildings that we build. And yes, we can always love the more modern take on how our houses are or how our buildings are, but many times, like, it's really important to think about, okay, how can we still think about these traditional ways and traditional elements, that even if we have a design on our door. Because I remember even within my family's house, we have, let me look up it right now. We have the carvings of, I'm going to show you. Okay.
Oh, so that's what it is.
Say it again.
I was just trying to see. No, please go ahead. I was trying to see if I could let them dial in. That would have been great too, right?
Right, let's see. I think you can if they're raising their hand.
Let them dial in.
Yeah.
Let them dial in and get in a conversation.
So I think, you can say who can, who can. I don't know. Let's see. So thinking about like my family's house, how we have the carving of the door and the umbrella's right there. and kind of think about, that importance of that story too. Yes.
Those who have their hands up, let's see if we can get them on a call.
Okay.
I think it's a thing. I try to stay out of public eye, so I don't know how to use these things. Every time I get on a Zoom call, I learn something new.
Oh yes. Okay, so we're gonna try this. I think we can say allowed to talk.
Yeah, they can. You can just unmute it. Yeah, you can unmute them. Yeah,
Hi, Christian. Did you want to say something?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. I'm watching you live from Hanoi, Vietnam.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I commented on your post and I asked for the Zoom link. And
Oh yes.
It's pretty late here, so I'm going to keep my voice very low. It's like 11:19 p.m.
Oh wow.
Where are you?
Okay, so my question is, but first of all, I appreciate what you guys are doing. Like, really, it really reminds me of, my culture and all of that. So I really like it. And I've been saving most of your videos. I just copy the link and just go and download them. It's like I'm having my own archives from Si Hene.
Perfect. Yeah. Yes.
Sometimes I share them with my family. So we really appreciate what you guys are doing. I have a question. My question is about the genealogy. Does Si Hene have plans to go into the traditional leaders' genealogy, or even people who made up the traditional leaders? Like, do you have plans to dig into that genealogy, like find out who their parents and grandparents and all those things
yes.
are?
I know, yeah, that's definitely the plan. I mean, a lot of people who follow our page do say, oh, my grandfather was this chief, or he's now in the UK, or he's currently in Ghana or somewhere like that. So a lot of times we do have people that reach out. And it might not be something that's going to be like maybe in 1 or 2 years, just because there's other elements that we really want to focus on. But that's definitely, on our list of things to do, just because I think thinking about the family lineage is very important. And really thinking about, even your name stay, like what lineage does that have? And so being able to really see where those connections can lead to. A lot of times people say, oh, like they found their cousin because they had the same last name, or they had the same grandfather. So being able to, continue helping people kind of relocate their families in some type of way, or relocate that royal lineage within their family history is very important. But it's not going to be something that we're going to do very quickly, because that's just going to takes more time to really dig deeper into really each of the history of the chieftaincy. And I feel like once we actually tackle that part and actually tackle about how do we actually make this accessible, then we can actually talk about the family lineage of where everything connects to as well.
That is understandable. And do you have like people in Ghana? I was listening to you from the beginning. You said that, but thank you for your answer. You said that most of your things you get are from libraries in the museums in America or somewhere else. Do you have like people go around in Ghana, try and collect, like go to these villages and try and ask people questions and all those things? Do you have people such that?
Oh no, not yet. So, well, right now I was the main person, looking up this, but I'm slowly building a team so that we can get to that point where we can travel to these different regions and really start recording history and actually finding the photos that are there. Just because even with the chiefs, we can't all be at one place at the same time. But being able to build a team, we're going to be able to actually interview a lot of the chiefs, talk with them. And I think too, before we even do that, we have to build a relationship with them, because not all the information they're going to be open to say, okay, here you go. But, once we build that relationship and build that respect with the chiefs and the councils, then it's going to be much easier to be able to say, okay, we're doing this project. Here's this information that they want to give to us so that we can actually build. Because our plan is to build one of the best and one of the most accessible databases of our chieftaincy physically in Ghana, nowhere else, but physically in Ghana. But before we do that, like the chieftaincy itself is just very just you got to go through a lot of different things. So you can't just knock on the door and just say, okay, where's the archives? But you really want to make sure that you have the respect from the councils, from the, even the Ministry of Chieftaincy, so they know that, okay, you're really serious about this. And what information that they give to you, in a way, is very sacred, but they know that you will continue these legacies. So we're definitely trying to make sure that we go about it the right way.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for this answer. But by the way, I'm down for any help or anything. I'm willing to offer my assistance. Anything.
Perfect.
That's nice. That's nice.
Yeah, when it comes to genealogical works and relations, because I'm an international relations student, so I relate with other people very well.
Okay,
And
perfect.
I can also do a little bit of historical research. So
yeah.
if there's anything I'd like to volunteer, anything, okay?
Yes, well, definitely message me on Si Hene's Instagram, or you can email at info@sihene.com.
I definitely will. Thank you so much.
No problem, no problem.
Basil next.
Okay, so let's see. We can do.
Keep time in mind as well, So.
Yeah, so let's just do 2 more people that have their. Or if anyone wants to say any last comments or have any questions, just raise your hand.
Yeah, we have a few over there.
Okay, so we'll do Samuel.
Basil.
Hello.
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 Hi.
How are you doing?
Thank you for doing this. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, I'm so excited, listening to this. I've been looking forward to this because I saw the post right when you put it on your Instagram. By the way, I've been following you since the beginning.
Yes.
And I think you're doing a very, very great job.
Thank you.
I'm a fashion designer, and then my graduate collection was actually built around the funeral culture of the Ashanti. And even though I was done with my collection before Si Hene, I saw Si Hene on Instagram. It really helped me in developing and understanding most of the stuff that I was working on, because there was, as you said, there was very, very little imagery on very specific things. For example, you see pictures of Otumfor or Pempel, all of these things, but you never see very specific images or information from very specific places. So yeah, saying that has been great. And my question is, in the beginning of the session, you mentioned something. You mentioned Batakari briefly, and I just wanted to ask. I've always been questioning the word Batakari. Is it like an Ashanti word, or is it quote unquote a northern word? And secondly, is it how does it cross? How does the path cross? Between Ashantis and the northern. How does it cross that Batakari is being used? Because to me, I always felt like Batakari was like a key word, but then it's still being referred in the north as Batakari as well. So I just wanted to understand where the relation comes from. And then being Ashanti, I know how Ashanti people are dominant, so we just try to take over everything. So I just really want to understand, so I know how to defend myself when I talk about these things. I was just wondering if you could share light on that.
Yes, I think Emmanuel, you can do that one.
Yeah. So Batakari has been around for. There was Batakari before Kinti. Kinti is new.
Okay.
And yes, it came from the north. The intersection is in the wars. There was an Asante war with Okunria, Chufo Okunria. And he's responsible for the Ashanti administrative system as it is today. That's used today. It was from the Queen's time. His name is Osei Sirimjata. And his conquest, when he went to conquer the Gonjas there, the king gave him his Batakari, and that's the Batakari Kesia that Si Hene wears. You see when the Ochufo sits down, there's a lion in front of him. That's a symbolism of where it comes from. So that is the intersection of Batakari and Asantima. And of course, yes, it is a warrior war. It is a warrior war. What else? I think in my own research in it, I see its uniqueness as far as its place as a unifying symbol. We talk about identity, because eventually Kente will be played out. I mean, you can't print Batakari like you can print Kente cloth. So if you're trying to hold on to identity, I mean, I think those are some of the elements that we need to start, or pieces in our identity that we need to hold on to, So yeah, Batakari. I think the other part of your question was, how do we preserve Batakari, right? I mean, I think the North itself is a whole place we need to look at, and what is there. And it's unfortunate. I mean, we can always make that excuse that there's nothing there, you can't find it. But if you really, people have done some work, which is out there, I think it's just putting the pieces together. Because if you dig a little bit deeper into what is underneath the northern lands as we see it today, you will realize, I mean, you talk about how Ashantis take over a lot. Yes, it's only part of their nature, as the way the group came together to do that. But before that, there was North, and then there was Batakari. So that's what I'll say.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
But I think there's a part of the question that you missed out. I also wanted to know, like the etymology of the name, the Batakari. Is it like a Chi word, or is it like?
Oh no, it's from the North. I'll actually look up the meaning and share with you. It's something that hasn't crossed my mind yet. So I'm glad that you brought it up. I'll share it with you, and then very soon.
Thank you very much.
No
Once
problem.
again, cheers, Mawuena.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll do 2 more. Let's see.
Sila's been waiting.
Yes. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, man.
Oh no. Oh, the sec. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, we need to get Basila on there.
Yep. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited about what you're doing. It's very hard to find millennials like doing this. It's mind blowing. I came across your page on Instagram, and I mean, I think the universe just connects, because for the past year that I've been working on some of these things locally, like I just come across these things, and I'm very excited about what you're doing with Asafo flags. Like, I'm right there, but I must say that like I'm learning a lot from the content you put out there.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm quite excited about that. But then I think the education bit that Emmanuel mentioned is very important, because if you look at our generation, they're very young people who are getting involved in this conversation.
That's very true.
And you will find yourself engaging with like a lot of people, like, our generation, and you'll be talking about chieftaincy, and they don't get a head and tail of it. They don't understand even the structure, so it's easier to be deceived. Even sometimes it's easier to be deceived by misrepresentation.
Mm-hmm.
There are chiefs who carry themselves as paramount chiefs and are not paramount chiefs. They are not even the chiefs of the town. They're probably sub-chiefs, So there's a whole structure. There's a very beautiful structure to our chieftaincy that we're not paying a lot of attention to, because the education in that regard is very low. So I'm quite excited about what you're doing. We have something going on in Gomwa called Gomwa Rising, and we're just trying to project our identity, extensively, so that the younger generation can benefit from it, because that the narrative around Gomwa has often been filtered through the lens of our larger Akan subgroup, that is the Fanti.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's important to take advantage of the opportunity to provide like strategic value add to like our overall outlook. And I will definitely want to collaborate I have a lot of history on Gomwa. I would definitely want to collaborate with you and share the data that I have, you know, and see how best we can move forward, you know, and share value. But I want to ask, like, with all of these things, I mean, it doesn't come cheap, you know. So where's funding coming from? Where's funding coming from?
I fund it myself. Yes, funding is very hard, especially too because since Ghana doesn't own any of the photos, you have to, you know, like Getty Images. I think for each photo is like $400, which is very, very expensive just for one photo. Even some of the photos I try to buy, or even on eBay, surprisingly, even like not even just the photos, but artifacts like the school itself. You'll be very surprised how much they'll sell it for. Because a lot of times people buy these things when they come to Ghana, or they might go on it, like they might be a historian, but then they might get to the age or they passed away and their family has all these artifacts. They're like, okay, we don't see any value. So now they sell it on eBay, they sell it on, you know, Amazon, and they sell it for very low. So it's very surprising to actually see less, like our culture is so valuable, but then when they're just sold on eBay for like nothing, it's very sad. So yeah, it's yeah. So I mean, yeah, funding is hard just because a lot of times too, it's just like, a lot of times the funding is not even coming from Ghana because to themselves they don't see value in what I'm doing and what people who are doing archives, because they're like, oh, okay, this is history, but they have more things that they want to put in money for. But you know, it's just a lot of, it's a lot of research. Si Hene stuff is a lot of research. Funding itself is a lot of research. But yeah, it can get very expensive with the photos because each photo depends on where you get it from. It can go from $400 to $1,000, or even artifacts. It can go high depending if the person knows really the value of it, but it also can go very low if maybe it's just brought down from generations of Western families that just had a historian in their family. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, to think of the unemployment situation and to think that, I mean, you have to spend this much on buying photos online, I think is important. It's very important that you build this team, you know, so that, I mean, you can have a team of people, multi-hyphenated content producers, you know, who can help you get the work done. Because I mean, we need to tell our own stories. There's a creative team. I was in touch with a creative team in Gomwa and somewhere in Cape Coast as well, you know, and I mean, you they will be excited to be a part of this. You know, so I think it's about time that the education bit, if you can structure your external communication very well, I think you're going to attract a lot of people who are going to support this agenda, because this is mind-blowing, and this is the first I've seen in our generation that is actually looking at like going very far with this. You know, I applaud you. I wish you all the best with your team, Emmanuel as well. Yeah, thank you so much for the engagement.
Thank you.
Yo, man.
Okay, we'll do one more person.
Let's give him two. They always staying with us. So
the first one is okay. Well, okay.
Yeah. So there's one that you keep missing.
What? I know why I'm missing. It's my
okay.
Yeah. So we'll do and then we'll do Raphael.
One. Then I think there's a question in the Q&A. Let's take one there as well.
Yeah, but you can unmute yourself too. Wait.
Hold on, go.
Oh no, there's a person. Oh, hey, there you go. Hello.
Hello, Miss Rita. Hello, Emmanuel.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm well. I'm well.
Yes.
Yeah. I would like to say you guys are sharing great information. It's rich. The knowledge is very rich, especially from Emmanuel's end. I've enjoyed the conversation, every bit of it. I think it's high time that we get people involved to push this agenda that we want to push. It's there are many chiefs out there who are willing to give support, who are willing to give information. And there is one problem when it comes to the sharing of information, when you realize that most of them are shrouded in mystery, and then some of them shy away when you ask them about the information and all. But I think as time goes on, you'll be able to get them on board, and then who knows, this thing might become something big. And I really enjoyed this conversation.
Nice.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah, and you're right. I'll tell you like this, man. It's all we have as the only thing that can really be messed with on so many different levels,
Yes.
And everything else we have, we're sitting there as ducks. We are vulnerable in every other way, but with the culture and how to preserve it and tie it to identity, it's something that we have a chance to shape it, and the Chiefs, they are the custodians of it. I mean, people talk about Si Hene and they should bring development, they should do this and that. Yeah, that's part of it. They may or may not. We shouldn't always expect them to do it, even though they should do it. But the culture, we should make sure that they are preserving it.
I went to Prempeh College, and then concerning our culture and Prempeh, you can easily tell them, and especially in our school emblem, and then in how we hand over. So basically, we have a replica of Prempeh II ceremonial stool in our school. We call it the Nyansapo, and that's what they use to swear in new school prefects. And I think yes,
those are the ways we need to embed the culture, so that it's so practical for the kids as they're coming up. They see it all around them.
Yes.
Prempeh and Achimota also has a lot of relations. We are brothers. Because Prempeh II himself, he came down and see it and like, let me do it. And that is why there's a lot of culture in Prempeh as well.
Yes.
Yes. And you visit Upukwari school, and then you find out that they have the impompons or the replica of Asante Hene's personal sword over there too. And they also use that one for their swearing in. And so I think these elements are all around us. It is up to us to incorporate them into the various things that we do. And I'm very happy that the Almighty National Cathedral has taken the shape of a stool, and it's good. Those things promote our culture. I must say, you guys are doing a good job.
So
thank you.
There's two stuff that you talk about, right? We're talking about architecture as an element that we can look into in the range of things. There's also furniture. You can preserve this majestic form in furniture. And there's two. I think it should get to a point where, and again, the umbrella for her. These are symbols that we can consolidate some value behind it and present it in a very unique way that hasn't been looked at. And I think sometimes once you give a different perspective to something that's around people all the time, they sit back, they look at it like, okay, it's actually practical. And I think a lot of times we don't nobody takes the time to break it down to that granular level. But I mean, as we all here doing this, it goes to show that we have interest in it. I mean, I'm actually surprised people are still here listening to this conversation.
I know.
I think I'm very delighted. I've already met Miss Rita, but
yes.
I'll be very delighted if I can meet you, Emmanuel, and then Miss Rita. Yeah, you guys have in-depth knowledge, in-depth information. We are just praying that things take a faster turn, and then our agenda comes in full force. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One Q&A down there, and I think we're done.
Yes, and then we have one more person that wanted to say something.
Guys, I'm glad that you're enjoying it.
We have one more person though. Wait, let's see. Let me.
Yeah, that's dope.
Okay. Where did he go? Okay, let's see. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
That's great. Nice to be part of this discussion. Very interesting for Emmanuel. This project that you have on Rita,
Yes.
it's a very, very laudable project and a very, I would want to use the word commendable project. But what you should realize, my lineage comes from the Ashanti in the Eastern region, which is called both from the royal homes. My father comes from the Ashanti Menchia, and then my mother comes from the Obomin clan in Kwawu, which is the Eastern region.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was a gentleman who asked a question. I think he's from Vietnam.
Yes.
Am I right? Okay. And the question had to do with the contacts you've had with the chiefs, if any. Now, what you have to realize, Emmanuel, also is most of these chiefs who assume their seats, whether sub-chief or chief themselves, they are only more connected to their own people within the town or village. They don't seem to have an understanding of having to expand the information about their clan beyond their town or village or city. Now, what needs to be done, I believe, this concept that you have.
Yes.
I have spoken to certain parties in Menchia on your behalf, Rita, which I'm sure we had a discussion with.
Yes.
I'm close to Si Hene myself. I had a discussion with him, and we'll have to go through a process, and the process so that it can be cataloged in respect of my brother Emmanuel talking about the Akwesidai, which is something that the Menchia is keeping very close to their chest, because if we don't, if just imagine Emmanuel losing Akwesidai, you know, it kind of breaks down any understanding to any culture from any of the 10 regions, having you know, the quality of promoting chieftaincy and our culture. The groundwork would be done. We're in a problem now where we have COVID. I mean, I remember, Rita, I spoke to you that my plan would have been to visit the 10 regions with different chiefs and doing floats on trailer trucks, in having to extend the understanding, because most of the children who even live in the villages or towns don't have the understanding of the lineage of the chiefs and the clans.
Yes.
You know, it's a lot of work because technology is almost trying to wipe out our tradition in concept of promoting our chieftaincy. I would believe that from this particular Zoom link that you've done, Emmanuel, the next thing is probably to link to the TV stations and have a platform, which I see Emmanuel shaking his head.
I mean, it's a good idea because I feel like you don't, even on TV, even in Ghana and TV stations, they don't have too much.
You know, I shake my head because there's a fear of saturation.
Mm-hmm.
They can get very quickly oversaturated because of a lack of dynamism in the space as it is now. So you don't want to cheapen it because it's royal, it's majestic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if the people, you see, I think part of the infrastructure of keeping this grounded, you know, we have to look at what kind of substructure we put in behind it before we even present it to the public, and deepening that substructure so that, you know, one of our friends was asking, how do you fund it? How do you work it? That is that substructure, you know. So once we deepen that and we put it in the public domain, you know, okay, then we can control the narrative because it's our thing. I mean,
okay, that's a good point, but I can also say to you, there are some, if we talk about the Ashanti side of the kingdom, there are some radio stations, some television stations that actually have, you know, come of age now.
I like open source TV. I listen to the interviews that they do on there with the
excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I know open source. Oh, pay
Open,
attention. They
that's
wake up.
good. Open source is an example where they get information from the clan or the palace,
Yeah.
and they put out the information, and therefore move on from there. I'll tell you, Emmanuel, what I tried to do before the COVID came in, and I don't know how well people understand, for example, the Ashanti Kingdom. When I spoke to somebody about saying that in chambers, the Queen of England bows to the King of the Ashanti, certain people would say, oh, how would she bow to them? But, there's some culture, embedded culture and understanding there that most of us don't even know. Beyond that, it's about putting certain cultures from this part of our culture to other parts of cultures around the world. I don't know if you think it's a good idea, because one thing I started to do when I had the opportunity was to, when you go to the UAE, you have two cultures or three or four cultures that, spin to be the UAE. You have the Abu Dhabians, you have the Maktoums and all that. What I tried to do was to use the Abu Dhabians to link to the Ashanti Kingdom, so that there would be a link somewhere. And actually, it came through when I met the ambassador from UAE to what's this country that our king ended up abdicating to? He was pushed to Seychelles.
Yes.
Okay, exactly. So with Emmanuel's point that you made about having to deepen the culture, most of these chiefs don't even know how to promote the culture to benefit for their own people, because many people don't even know. And most of the subjects of the villages or the towns don't even understand, the purpose of their chief, to be honest, because it's, go ahead.
I'm cool.
Oh, you're cool. Okay. Okay.
But I mean, yeah. So I know Ko, and so
Okay.
I know
All
the
right.
intersection. I was born in Kumasi, so I know the intersection of
then
Ko
then
and
then
Asante.
you and I have the same connection, because I
Yeah,
was born in.
I was born in Kumasi, so and be from Ko as well. I get, I see the mind, I see the headspace you're in with this one.
Exactly.
Yeah, I see the
Exactly.
headspace you're in. It's
So
very
for me,
practical. It's very, very practical.
For me, I grew up in the UK, and you have this tradition where you ask about your lineage, and your mom will say, "Oh, don't worry, I don't want you to go there," and all that. But having come home, what allowed me to be able to settle back in Ghana was the connection of having to visit Menchia and sit down with the great-great-grandfathers and great-uncles that I had there, and also go to Obominko to also sit down at the palace, to speak to the people, to speak to them about my great-grandfather, who was also a king, or I would say the king of Obomi. But let me also say this. It is a very painful and expensive project.
Oh, yes.
Which we've had a discussion on that, which at the end of the day, if the more connections we get, the better the prospect of having to connect ourselves through. And I believe that when we have things getting better with the COVID and everything, I would lay the foundation on the ground for Si Hene to be able to get the context that is needed, and the context that is needed that you connect to will be cataloged, and better informed to many people who are interested. We have a beautiful culture, rich tradition, but unfortunately the news is hidden. So I pray that and hope that Emmanuel, we can proceed on that tangent. And this kind of connection that you did with Zoom, I think it should be done a bit more, because you will come to find that a lot of people will connect to Si Hene more and also be able to contribute to certain things, just like the gentleman from Gomoa, if I'm right.
Yes.
He's from Gomoa, exactly. He made a very good point. I only went to Gomoa Fete for the first time ever last week, when the late Kofi Annan's young son who has a place there, and we visited. It's a beautiful place, and trust me, you would never know a place like that existed, you know. But yet we don't know much about it. The only thing we know of the Fanti land mostly is the Cape Coast and Takrady, you know, and then maybe Swedrobe. Beyond that, we don't even know much from there. But I hope this can continue, and all the contributions that we all can support you with. I'm always going to be here for that, Rita.
Thank you.
Let me say a thing about Achimota School, but we're also part of the thing. You just shouted out, Si Hene.
So let me say, you're Emmanuel, you're in Achimota School, right?
Well, this is a Si Hene Achimota collaboration.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Oh, so you're okay. So you're part of Achimota School.
Yes.
The only link I remember with Achimota School is a late brother of mine, Daniel, who passed on about 9 years ago. I remember back then, I think it was 78, 79. That was my first and last visit to Achimota School around the cool time in 79.
Okay.
That's the only memory I have of Achimota. I've never gone back there to visit.
Well, check us out on Instagram. We have a lot of stuff in there. I'm also archiving over there as well. I'm doing a lot of different things with it. You'll be fascinated with it.
Okay, that'll be great.
That's part of the and I'll say this. I know we're almost at 2 hours. We didn't have 2 hours. I'm so sorry. But as the conversation is flowing, as you can see, but yeah, bringing it back to Achimota, archiving its history as well. You know, like I mentioned earlier on, we have a 100th anniversary coming up, and part of that vision is to be able to showcase the growth over the last 100 years.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
a lot of growth, and luckily we have some documentation of it. We have people who can put it together, and we would like to have you there. You know, if you're in town. It's March 2027 is what the date is, and
well, it's next year, right?
No, we have 3 more years to go, I think.
Okay, 3 more years. Okay.
2024.
Okay.
One of those dates, but anyway. So, yeah, we need to look at that, and as a showcase. You know, one of our friends was talking about the education part of it. That is a showcase. I mean, once you put it out there like that, you know, people will see it, and then these collaborations can happen with yourself, with Si Hene. And somebody asked in there, what is the meaning of Si Hene? So I think that should be our last.
Oh yes, I messaged them, but yes, Si Hene means installments. Yes.
Si Hene.
I mean, Si Hene in the Akan part is Si Hene, Si Hene, as you said, Emmanuel, instrument. It's instrument. I mean, so I mean, look, I believe this has to be done again. Emmanuel and Rita, since Emmanuel, you have another 3 to 4 years before you hit the 100 for Achimota. I think it has to be done again, and the broader it is, the better it is for both parties. I believe.
Ideas, bring it all together.
It's important. Look, let me say this, Emmanuel, to this and Rita. It is so important that I lost my father in 69, and I was born in 68. Now, he was so popular. When people speak of him, they speak good of me. Yeah. Now, until you got to listen to who he was, it then reconnected to who I have been to who I am today. So the connection of the tradition and also the culture that has linked myself coming back home to my father's side and also my mother's side is exceptional, and it's good for a way of bringing up our children as well. Very, you know, once we lose the culture and tradition, then we turn to be selling our children. I will say that it's another form of slavery. If you can,
but we're close. You know, we're on a slippery slope. If we don't take care, it will be nuded, and that's why. I mean, you talk about we need to have more of these conversations. I hear you, but yeah. So because I think we're not paying enough attention to how serious we sit on the brink of losing something great control over.
That's true.
You know?
I agree.
Yeah, and it happens so quick that if you don't take care, you miss it. You blink and you miss it.
No, that's very true.
So
That's very
yes, Rita, your final words, please.
Yes. I mean, I just want to thank everyone for coming in and joining, and the comments, the questions. We really do appreciate it. And this is not going to be the last time you hear from us. There's going to be many, many, many more. And, you know, even for myself, for Si Hene, we're working on a traveling exhibition for next year. So we're crossing our fingers for that. We'll be Si Hene throughout the whole country. I won't tell you too much. It's mostly be a surprise once it comes closer. But we're very excited to really establish Si Hene in Ghana and just being able to preserve the Royal Archives of Ghana, as our talk was about today. So we really do appreciate everyone, every single one of you, the supporters, because without you all, Si Hene wouldn't be where it is. You know, you guys literally are my motivations. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm sure our great grandfathers are watching over you, Rita and Emmanuel, for showcasing what is expensive but yet denied.
Yes.
Yes. All right, guys. You know, thank you for coming, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Edina Branye, Edina Branya, Edina Branye, Edina Branya. Insu kasoti the wada bosumbu Branya, Edina Branye, Edina Branya, Edina Branye, Edina Branye. Insu kasoti the wada bosumbu Branya, Obiamo, Edina Branya, One Kenya, one Kenya, one Kenya, one Kenya, one Kenya, one Kenya. Stanley Branye, Daga Branye, Martin Branye, Shally Branye, Ashanti Branye, Lee Branye, Daga Branye, Martin Branye, Motion Pabori Pond, Sogawa Miba, Kesa Woba, Motion Pabori Pond, Sogawa Miba. Taka brenya, li brenya, moti brenya, shale brenya, ocean papori pon, soba wa mi ba oslike sa woba. Ocean papori pon, soba wa mi ba oslike.